afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on health and well-being coaching. My name is Molly Buss, and I'm the Community Relations Manager at the Earl E. Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing. And my role for this webinar is to moderate the chat. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, maybe sharing where you're joining us from or what you're excited to learn about today. I also want to give a quick introduction of the Bakken Center for those who may not be familiar with our work. It is our vision to advance the health and well-being of individuals, communities, and organizations through integrative health and healing. And we strive to provide free and accessible well-being resources and webinars, and we need your help to continue to do this work. If you're able to, please consider making a donation of any amount, and I will provide a link in the chat to donate, and more information will also be shared in the post-webinar email. I also have a few logistical items to cover. You're welcome to share your thoughts and comments via the chat box. And if you're comfortable and want to share your responses with all participants, please make sure to update the to field in the chat box to all panelists and attendees. There's also a Q&A icon where you can submit your questions, and we'll ask our presenters as many as we have time for at the end of the session. We'll send out an email with a recording of the webinar, a PDF of the PowerPoint slides, and some other resources. I'm now delighted to introduce Dr. Mary Jo Kreitzer, founder and director of the Center for Spirituality and Healing. Mary Jo will be facilitating the Q&A segment, and will also share some more information about our presenters.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing's Wellbeing webinar series. For more than 25 years, we've been advancing the health and well-being in people, organizations, and communities, and we are very excited today to be hosting as our speakers, Dr. Karen Lawson and Teresa Newt, who will be sharing a presentation titled, "Why Everyone Deserves a Health Coach." The Bakken Center has long been a leader and an advocate for the health coaching profession. Integrative health and well-being coaching, an emerging method of partnering with patients to help them achieve their overall goals, is practiced from a holistic perspective that views each person as intrinsically whole and the ultimate expert in their healing journey. Health coaching is being offered now in a wide variety of venues, including hospitals, clinics, community health, and fitness facilities, corporations, educational institutions, and private practices. Since 2005, we have offered the first academically based graduate health coaching program in the United States, which is our post-baccalaureate graduate certificate in integrative therapies and healing practices with an emphasis in health coaching. Our program now also includes a master's degree in coaching. Graduates of our coaching program are literally changing the world and helping people explore an array of ways to heal. In the newest edition of the Mandala, the Center's news magazine, you'll find a feature about one of our most recent health coaching program graduates, Jamie Hazelton, whose passion is working with people within the LGBTQIA+ communities, and specifically the trans and gender non-binary communities. We'll be sending you a link to this story in the post-webinar email. So now I'll introduce the two speakers. Dr. Karen Lawson is the co-director of the Center's Integrative Health and Wellbeing Coaching Program. She's also an assistant professor within the university's medical school. Dr. Lawson is a physician, board certified in both family medicine and integrative and holistic medicine. She is the co-founder and executive board member of the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching. Teresa Newt is the co-director of the Center's Integrative Health and Wellbeing Coaching Program. Teresa has a bachelor's degree in nursing and a master's degree in human development. Teresa has served regionally on the International Coaching Federation Minnesota Board and participated in the Group Coaching Competency Task Force for the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching. Welcome, Karen and Teresa.
Thank you so much, Mary Jo.
Thank you so much, Mary Jo.
So to get us started off, bear with us for just a moment. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to pull a PowerPoint up for everybody.
And Karen, while you do that, how about I do my introduction? How does that sound?
That would be lovely.
All right. So hi, everyone. Just briefly, as I mentioned, I am Teresa Nutt, and I'm the co-director of the health coaching program and come with a nursing background. So a lot of years in healthcare in different settings, and coaching came to me almost 20 years ago at a time when health coaching wasn't a thing yet. So I had the interesting experience because of my healthcare background of being introduced to health coaching and sort of being a pioneer in the field without knowing that's what I was doing. So Karen, how about you?
Well, I come to this as an integrative physician who was puzzled and amazed when I saw that even in integrative medicine, that people still struggle to be able to make the life changes and the lifestyle changes, the behavioral changes that were recommended to them by all kinds of providers, and that they wanted to make themselves but didn't have support to do so. And really discovered that there was a missing role in medicine, and that role turned out to be what we call a health and well-being coach. So I've been working to advance that field and to find a way to train and promote health coaching as a way of empowering individuals, families, communities to really take charge of their own health and to be able to have the resources and support that they need to really make meaningful life changes. So it's exciting to be here today, Teresa.
Yes, thank you, Karen. So I want to just share the objectives for today's conversation. We want to let you know what health coaching is. We recognize it's a newer field that's really developed in the last 15 years more formally. And so we want to let you know more about that and what makes it unique compared to other professionals out there in the healthcare arena. We want to let you know when it's particularly useful. Always good to know what tool to use at what time. And then also look at how health coaching can help you find optimal well-being in all aspects of your life. You will hear throughout this presentation how our center and our philosophy toward health coaching is very holistic and integrative, and that changes the scope of the coaching. And then finally, how you can find a credentialed health coach. One of the things we will also discuss today is all of the pioneering work Karen has done to really forward the field has also created a level of recognition nationally for board certified health coaches. So thanks, Karen. Let's start with a definition. Always good to start there. So some of the distinguishing parts of the definition of health coaching is that we partner with clients who are seeking self-directed, lasting changes. We want to help people make changes that are aligned with their values, that promote their health and wellness, and overall that enhance their well-being. And we'll talk more about it later, but this really can depend on the person. Everyone's definition of health and wellness, everyone's definition of well-being is different, and we are very much intrigued by and curious about each person's definition and want to fit within that instead of pushing our agenda onto them. We also come at coaching from a very unconditional positive regard for our clients. We come from a strength place where we feel people are fully whole and able to make choices that are good for their life. Whether or not we understand them is irrelevant. And so we hold this belief in their capacity for change. And the last part I hold most dear after many years of working in healthcare is that we honor that the client is the expert about their life and their journey of health. And so we want to work very diligently day and night. A lot of the work we do is self-discovery so that we are respectful and non-judgmental in our interactions with others. And all of this and more can be found on the National Board website. So you'll get that in follow-up materials. And so we wanted to hit, Karen and I decided we'd just give you a quick overview of the big buckets of what health coaches really do. We obviously improve health and wellness, but we do it by improving behaviors and beliefs. It's intriguing to me and interesting, we'll talk about it more, how often we are just habitual creatures and we have behaviors and beliefs that are automatic. And so learning how to interrupt and redirect those is really key to what we do in health coaching. The second part I love from years of being a nurse is we all know what to do. The self-help section of any store out there is larger than any other section, including fiction. I find that statistic fascinating. So there's plenty of information about how to live a really great life, but to actually move from the prescription of what it is to how to actually create goals and work with them to optimize well-being is something different. And that's really, health coaching is designed to bridge that gap. We are really focused on a relationship partnership and safe space. It's very, very client-centered, which we're very happy to see more and more of healthcare moving toward. We'll talk more about that later. And we, as health coaches in the world, are very interested in and diligently working on our own self-care, our own health, and our own well-being, because we believe we can't take anyone further than we've been. We don't have to know exactly the journey they have walked, but we have to know what it is to bump up against those automatic behaviors and beliefs that trip us up, and how we work through those with support from someone else. So we are very interested in being those people who are role models for the rest of the world as it relates to health and well-being. So with this little bit of demonstration of the basic definitions and et cetera, Karen and I would like to do a 10-minute demo for you, just so you can experience health coaching, because sometimes the experience is easier than the actual definitions and describing. So Karen, I'm going to let you take it away.
Great, thank you, Teresa. And just to acknowledge that in routine settings, and particularly in the types of coaching that we train people in, it would be pretty standard for people to have a 1-hour initial visit and often half an hour follow-ups. So while there are other coaching models out there may do very brief encounters, it's not typically what we train. So, but in the interest of, we only have a 1-hour webinar, we want to be able to give you a little example and a little taste. So we're going to do just a small 10-minute demo to give you a feeling of the flavor. And Teresa is going to be my client today, and I'm going to be the coach, and we'll let you experience what it's all about. So welcome, Teresa. Thank you for being here with me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Good to be here.
Why don't we take just a moment and kind of really get ourselves here and present so that we can focus our time and energy on what's important for you today. So I'm going to invite you, if you're comfortable, to take a soft focus or to close your eyes. And let's just take 3 nice, deep belly breaths together. Oh, any sounds are welcome. Oh. And feeling nice and centered in your body, just invite you to bring up your intention for whatever you would like to focus on today, and to bring yourself back into our space together.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so my intention, I'm just recognizing, of course, it's been a COVID year and a half, so that plays into it, but I'm living with different people than I normally would be, and I'm recognizing that my eating choices have changed as a result. I wish I had better willpower. I don't. I won't even pretend. So I do best if there aren't certain things in the house, whereas the people I live with have all of my biggest weaknesses on display, readily available day and night. And so it's very hard for me to eat the way I want to feel well, because I'm noticing I have symptoms that I had cleared up with my diet in the past.
That must be really challenging. Well, Teresa, given that, and I really admire your recognition of the issue and knowing yourself well enough to know the challenge that's in front of you, and laugh a little bit about your strong will statement, because that's a challenge for all of us, isn't it? What do you think might help you be able to take better control of the circumstance, given that I think from what I've heard before, you're not going to be moving out of the living setting in the immediate future. So it is a certain reality, right? So what might be helpful for you today?
Yeah, I think as I've reflected on this just a little before this appointment, I really reflected on the fact that for me, the link that I want to talk about is, in my family, food is love. Certain kinds of food are lots of love. And so those are the very foods my body doesn't digest well. So I think it's helping me just unplug that definition of food as love and find a new way to experience that. I think that would serve me the best.
I love that awareness. And I'm curious, is that definition or that feeling of food as love, do you think, is that true just for you, or is that also true in your relationships with the other people in the house? And so are they going to play a role in that?
Yes, it's true for them. I mean, I think my mom for sure feels like she's giving love when she makes certain foods, and, you know, kind of has that whole "you look a little too thin" thing, like that good mom vibe. So yeah, so I mean, I think And I don't, I mean, to answer your question fully, I don't want to, what's the right word? Make her feel bad. Like that is she was a caterer and she's been cooking for churches and other big groups of people her entire life. And so that really does speak to her of giving love. So I want to be mindful of her experience of this as well. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Given that awareness, Teresa, I'm kind of curious because I'm sensing like we could go one of two ways. I'm just curious do you want to explore and think about how you might make that shift just for yourself? Or do you feel like that there's a shift that has to happen in communication and conversation with the other members of your household?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I feel like I've had some of those conversations and for whatever reason, they're not able to make a shift. So it's really on me. It's really on me.
Okay, well, that's good. Then we know where we are. So that's always a good place.
Yeah.
Yes. So Teresa, do you have any thoughts? I have some, but do you have any thoughts about ways in which we might approach how you for yourself might begin to shift that little bit of a, I don't know, it's a little bit of a paradox of the food is love and it's really not making your body feel well or feel loved. So yeah.
Right? Yeah, good. Boy, I mean, I have some ideas. I'm going to offer one, but I really feel stuck around this because the habit for me as someone who's really empathic and sensitive to the energies of others is I will override what I need in a heartbeat if the people I really care about are involved. So I'm just saying that out loud because I recognize it's a really deeply ingrained habit.
Sure. And it comes from a very loving space. I really appreciate that. So you said you have an idea of how.
I mean, I have a rough idea. Like I would love your insight because it's rough. It's like, I know I need to redefine love and I need to do something about that moment when I feel their desire to be loving in that way. And I just want to accept and receive that love. So, yeah.
Would you be willing to do a quick little imagery with me?
I would love it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes. And just picture a typical scenario where maybe mom has cooked one of her favorite meals with great generosity and loving intent toward you, but it's something that you know is not going to serve your physical body very well. And feel the love, really feel the love that you know that she's offering. And imagine, just imagine, make believe, any way that comes to you. Is there a way that you can receive that love that she's offering and let her know you're receiving that love she's offering without necessarily needing to consume a significant amount of the food that she has prepared for you? Can you imagine a scenario that may look different than what you've been living out in your everyday life? Just take a moment with it and see what comes up. And feeling whatever sensations or emotions you're feeling in your body as you're imagining this and holding awareness of those sensations and emotions. Just going to invite you back into our space together and see if there's anything from that that you would like to share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was struck by, I think the missing link after doing that is just saying out loud, the sort of, thank you, Mom. I can tell how much love you put into this meal. And unfortunately, I just don't digest it very well. So I want to take the love and leave the food, kind of a comment without saying it quite that directly, but I think I've never just done that.
Mm-hmm. How confident do you feel that you would be able right now to, let's say she cooks you dinner tonight, on a scale of 1 being going to happen and 10 is I'm sure I can do this. How confident are you feeling in being able to make that statement hedged in a wording that feels comfortable to you?
Yeah, I love it. Probably about a 5.
Okay. So what makes you a 5 and not a 3?
I mean, I think what makes me a 5 is I know I have the skills and I can I can find the right words.
Mhm.
Yeah. What makes me feel not higher than a 5 is the willpower part and the wanting to please, that habit of wanting to please and belong.
Oh, those habits
Yeah.
get us in trouble, don't they? So is there anything
Ooh.
that you can think of that we could do together or that we can come up with to help you move from a 5 to say a 6? Is there a barrier we could remove, a prompt, something that might help you build your confidence?
Yeah. I was even thinking, yeah, thanks for that. I almost feel like, you know how you practice CPR not when you have to do it, right? Like you have to practice it ahead of time.
Yes.
So I was feeling that impulse here. It's like I almost feel like I need to just practice for a period of time before I would even address it. It's like so that I can just practice. What would it sound like? What would it feel like? What would I have to deal with emotionally to say it and have my own back, stand by my side as I do it. So that's what I was thinking.
Great idea. Do you feel like that's a practice you could do by yourself or in the mirror? Is that a practice you want to do with somebody else, role playing that part of your mom?
I think initially I want to just practice myself so I can get the words down. And then I might invite a friend to be my pseudo mom for the demo.
Well, that sounds like a great plan. I want to acknowledge that just because of our short time today, we're about out of time. So didn't give you much warning, but it's hard in 10 minutes. So wanted to
Yes.
see, is there any one particular takeaway that you have from our time together today?
Yeah, I think that as I was listening to myself in this session, I really recognized the behavior itself is not hard. It's all the underlying emotions that are attached to it that trip me up. And so I really appreciated being able to say it out loud and hear it and think about how I could interrupt that. So that's what I'm taking with me.
Well, you have great self-awareness, and I hear a lot of commitment and desire, and that's always what fuels our potential for change. So please let me know if I can be of support to you in any way. And it sounds like you have a little practice plan when you go home tonight.
I absolutely do. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. I'm going to go ahead and we will reshare the PowerPoint here and maybe have a little discussion about that.
Yeah, so while Karen's getting up the PowerPoint, we just want you to take a second. That slide, when she gets it up, is really a question for you to hold about. What did you notice about this interaction that was different than other healthcare interactions you have been a part of? So if you would like to just share your thoughts in the chat, we'll collect those. We'll give you a little time to share what you're thinking or feeling or experiencing as a result of that demo, and we'll give a little feedback here momentarily. So what did you notice about that interaction?
And Teresa, I don't know about you, but in my sharing of the screen, I cannot monitor the chat. So are you able to see the chat?
Yep, I am actually.
Great.
Absolutely. So I will give people a couple minutes and then I'll just hit some of the high ones. So as the comments are coming in, Karen, this is what I can read for you real quick from the top. So it looks like the use of motivational interviewing led to more client-centered service was one of the first.
Great.
The coach asked you, the client, what you wanted to work on. So that client-centered approach again. Collaboration was another one. The person being coached was the leader of the session. So really that theme of noticing the client-led part of it, not attached to clinical outcomes. The client provided most of the answers. Client led the discussion and found her own solutions. Your exchange was very supportive and open, which encouraged more thoughtful sharing. And it sounds, let's see here. And one last, it seemed like the coach spent more time listening. So.
Well, great observations. We have good informed observers in our participants. So thank you for your reflection on that. Yeah. So, we wanted Teresa acknowledged in the objectives that one of the things we did want to talk about is how coaching is unique from some of the other things that we routinely see in healthcare. And so you guys have brought up some of those things. Coaching very rarely is a one-time, one-off kind of situation. I know there are some insurance companies and some other organizations that sometimes do the, call a coach and you call and you talk to one person once. Kind of like you would in a crisis line, but that's pretty unusual. on the whole, coaching is really built on that partnership, which becomes stable and more safe over time. And given I'm kind of a recovering family physician and I've watched the evolution of primary care for 25 plus years, and I think one of the things that makes many physicians sad is that because of the structure of our health insurance, our frequently changing insurance policies based upon employment, all of those kinds of things, and then the size of clinics and the need to just see a physician, whoever you can see, that partnership with your primary care physician is not always what it used to be, particularly in metropolitan areas. So coaching may be a way to kind of help change that and to fill a gap. And again, coming back to what matters to the client, which is one of the things you guys all observed, it really does focus on what matters to the client. So even if a physician were to, let's say, give a client a new diagnosis and then send them down the hall to see the coach is not going to just say, what does the doctor want you to do? The coach is going to start with what's important to you and how do those values align with the changes that the physician is recommending that you make. What are the strengths that you already have? What changes you've been able to make in the past and how can we build on that? How do we work to increase your own motivation and to make sure that we're in alignment with your priorities? For example, a type 2 diabetic may not get really excited about, well, you need to lose 40 pounds and start a regular exercise program, but they might be very excited about the fact of, well, my granddaughter is getting married next year and I want to be able to dance at the wedding, right? So how do we really move people forward by helping them align with the things that are important to them and staying oriented toward the success and seeing, quote unquote, what people call failures or things that didn't work the way they want them to as, opportunities to learn. They're experiments that if something didn't work, we can learn a lot from that as well. So in that sense, there's not a failure. There's always that opportunity to learn and grow. So we're going to introduce you to Shannon, who is one of our program grads and alumni, and see what words of wisdom that Shannon has to share.
So prior to becoming a health and wellness coach, I really viewed the world as sometimes as things that needed to be fixed. And so I carried some perfectionist type of qualities into my relationships, into my way of seeing things and my way of being in the world. I came to learn that that is a quality of mine that can be considered a strength, but also very much a deficit. And so just by becoming aware, I think that was the biggest change, is that self-awareness that this program has brought out in myself. So what I think is really intriguing about the field of health coaching is that it offers a different perspective and a different way of helping people throughout their journey. So there's so many benefits of seeing perhaps a mental health counselor or perhaps a nurse coach or a professional business coach. Health coaching takes a different approach in the sense that we're partnering with clients as they uncover a holistic perspective of their own personal well-being. And we stand beside them as an ally or a partner as they start their journey of really digging deeper. Health coaching can help people as they are on this journey to really reset, look at their priorities, look at their values, look at meaning and purpose, and to kind of uncover those things that maybe they haven't really looked at for a while. And so I think this is coming at a really critical time in our world where people are looking for that one-on-one connection, because I think that's something that's been lost. If we can change the conversation the doctors are having with themselves, it can change the conversation they're having with their patients. And that's the beginning of evolution and transformation across the healthcare system. I'm Shannon Yoakum, and I just received my master's degree in integrative health and well-being coaching.
Thank you, Shannon. I always love hearing words of wisdom from our alumni. So we'll chat for just a moment. Oh, sorry. Interesting. Let's try that. Okay. So while we discuss a little bit what Shannon has to say, we'd like to invite you to respond to the poll about, have you ever worked with a health coach or worked with a health professional who also did coaching with you? Sometimes those are kind of a combined roles or opportunities. So it may have been a nurse, a nutritionist, a physical therapist, or a trainer who also has been trained in coaching. So we're kind of curious as to what the experience of our audience is. And one of the things as you're responding to the poll that I just want to acknowledge from Shannon's video, which is such an important part of our program, is that Shannon talked about what she learned about herself and about the changes that she made so that she could learn and grow to be a good coach. We have a very strong emphasis in our training program on the fact that we don't think coaches can really take people farther than they've gone themselves. And that's not to mean that they have to reach the pinnacle of perfect health, but it means that they're always dedicated to addressing their own growth and development and optimizing their own well-being. So that's an important piece that we really emphasize as coaches. It's hard to be inspired by a coach that's not doing their own healthcare work. So that's important. So I think we've got a pretty good result here. It looks like of the folks who responded to our poll, we're split just a little bit less, about 40% of our population here have worked with a health coach, which is so exciting. 5 years ago, that would have been a much smaller number. And about 59% of the folks here have not had that opportunity. And so we hope by the end of the session, you might be inspired to consider doing that and that you'll have a way of understanding how you might find a coach. So Teresa, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you, Karen. Yes. So, we all know we want to make lifestyle changes. So we wanted to have this slide about how people get stuck, because it's rarely about getting started. Actually, getting started with a change, the first 2 or 3 days statistically are always the easiest. We can all get started. It's harder to stick with it. And there are a number of reasons why. So where people get stuck, most of us are not living in a vacuum. We have family and friends surrounding us, and those family and friends are accustomed to us behaving in certain ways that are a part of our culture. Whether you think about that as mini culture, as in your family of origin, or the culture of your community, et cetera. And so when you shift how you're behaving and showing up, it affects others and they may not like it. So that can make it hard to stick with changes. Also, old habits, right? Like exactly what I shared in my own exploration this morning, that those old habits of thought and behavior can be hard to change. Our brains are wired for neuroefficiency. It's a term I love to use because it's all about our brains want to find the fastest way, and the fastest way is the one we know the best. So it's not always the healthiest or the easiest. Sure. Also, our exhaustion, our stress, and our stress coping are huge parts of what can get us stuck. So looking at that, as well as, again, habits of thoughts and behavior. And finally, I want to just hit on the clinical conditions piece. When people find themselves needing to create a new normal based on something that's happened in their life, that is where people can really get stuck. So that's just a few ideas there.
And it's perfect. I think, Teresa, it's also helpful to reflect, at least from the literature, what we know, although it's changing and evolving. But on average, it takes about 100 days for you to do something new and different consistently and to start ingraining that in your way of being and looking at the world. So even though it feels like, wow, I've done it every day for a month, that's not long enough to really retool your brain to create those new neural networks. So it takes persistence. And for most of us, we need support during that time.
That's right. Thanks, Karen. So this slide is intentionally a tapestry because from our experience, Karen and mine, and the program that we run, our philosophy and approach is all about what happens in one part of your life. If you pull one thread, it affects every other thread in the tapestry. And so we wanted to use that as the groundwork for when coaching can be useful. And I want to share a story about a cancer patient who was done with her acute treatment. She had had breast cancer and had finished her acute treatment. And she was in that phase where suddenly all of the people, when you're going through acute treatment, there's so much help around you all the time. You've got physicians and nurses and advocates and all of these people. And suddenly her acute journey was over. She was, quote, in remission. And she felt this huge void of, there's no one around. I don't know what to do next. And I feel at a loss of what is my life all about now that my life is not all about treating this acute thing that I've been treating diligently for the past couple of years. So it was a great time for her to work on coaching and identify who her new support team could be and what she really wanted from her life. And Karen, I know you have one too, so I'm going to pass it to you.
Yeah, we love what we learn from stories. And so this, the client I'd like to share is actually was a client of a colleague of mine. It wasn't my client, but it was such a great learning experience. This was a middle-aged man that came in at the recommendation of his physician. He had multiple health problems. He was significantly overweight. He had high blood pressure, high cholesterol. He was borderline and transitioning into type 2 diabetes. He had a lot of stress. There was insomnia issues. I mean, he had a long list, right? And of course, the physician's predominant reason was he wanted him to see a coach or somebody that would help him lose weight to head off the type 2 diabetes. But when the client came in, as a good coach would do, the coach didn't go to, well, this is what the physician sent you here for. The coach approached him and said, well, of all of this big list of challenges going on for you, what's important to you and what would you like to work on? And the man took a couple of deep breaths and said, honestly, I'd really like to work on equanimity because I have a real challenge in communicating with my teenager. And that's creating a tremendous amount of stress for me. And I think that that's what I want to work on. She said, okay. So for 4 months, they saw each other and they worked on issues around communication and him managing his own triggers of stress in his relationship with his teenager. But this man was an engineer. So as per many engineers, he kept lots of charts and diagrams and stuff. And it turned out that he was tracking a bunch of things for his physician that the coach was unaware of. He tracked his weight, his blood pressure, his laboratory results with his cholesterol, et cetera. And given that they never once spoke about diet, about exercise, any of those things, at 4 months, the coach or the client said, I'm going to be seeing my physician this afternoon and I have these charts I put together for him. Would you like to see them? And the coach was like, sure, always curious, and looked at the charts, and the man had normalized his blood pressure. He had lost almost 40 pounds in 4 months. He had started an exercise program. His cholesterol lab results had come back normalized, and his fasting glucose lab results that had just come back were improved. So all of that is to say that often in medicine, we see a problem in our way of interfacing with that is to go directly at the problem. Oh, you need to lose weight. Okay, we need to work on diet, exercise. That's what we do. And that very often fails. And I think that one of the values of coaching is that it recognizes, as Teresa said, all of those threads are connected. And the individual knows which of the threads can be the most important that will have multiple impacts on all of the other aspects of their life. So I thought that was the coach was struck by it. She actually wrote that up as a case report, and we will share that with you in the follow-up materials that Molly sends out. So let's see. So reasons to work with a coach, and there are many, and you can probably all come up with some of your own, but a few that are very common to think about. Chronic persistent illness, like you're really living with something that you've had for a while, or you're going to have probably the rest of your life. Things like, arthritis, coronary heart disease, diabetes, chronic depression, things like that. Or you've recently got a new diagnosis and you don't know how to fit that in your life or how to, as Teresa said, manage that new normal. So that's a really commonplace, particularly for coaches that work in more of a healthcare setting. And then other places, anytime that there's a major life transition, your last child goes to college and you're an empty nester, there's a retirement, there's a birth or a death, a new relationship, a new challenge in your life with a new job. Anytime that our normal is disrupted, it creates an opportunity for us to make intentional choices about what we would like to see be different, even if the thing that we want to see be different may not be similar or in the same arena as that life transition. So we love it when we get people who are in those pivot points in their life. People who are dealing with health challenges that are not conventionally well managed or understood. Things perhaps like chronic Lyme disease, fibromyalgia, certain kinds of mental health disorders that are not necessitating medication, where the client is struggling to find ways to manage them themselves. Those kinds of things can really benefit by having the support and expertise of somebody in the coaching realm. Chronic pain is a big one of those. Our current healthcare system is in a bit of a crisis around finding new non-pharmaceutical ways to deal with chronic pain. And integrative medicine and coaching are both important approaches to helping people find ways to live better lives when they're suffering from chronic pain. Mental health skills and ongoing stress, we're really in an epidemic, which was even prior to the recent epidemic of COVID. We were seeing over the course of the last 5 to 10 years, growing population of even students coming into college with anxiety, mild to moderate depression. I mean, it's become so commonplace that it is overwhelming to our system of how to help these individuals deal with that. Coaching can be really great because it's about helping individuals develop their own self-management skills to give them ways to adapt to and survive through the stressors that they're experiencing. Any lifestyle change. I want to do something different than I'm doing now. And maybe I'm already pretty healthy, but I want to become a marathon runner. I want to become a chef. There's a new lifestyle change that I want to do, and I'm not sure where and how to start. Or if you've been working on a change and you're feeling really stuck. And optimally, because we also like to think about prevention and being optimistic. Sometimes you're good, but you just want more well-being. So how can you really optimize the way that you are living in the world? And those are multiple reasons why we see people see coaches. Teresa.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. So we want to invite you again in the chat to see if you would see yourself working with a health coach after learning more about it. And just give us, the quick little phrase. Would it be to manage a chronic illness, navigate a transition, find new solutions for a health challenge, build lifestyle skills to deal with chronic pain or mental health, manage your stress, move out of feeling stuck, or something else? We would just love to hear from you. So give us a little feedback.
So Teresa, while we're letting people write in the chat, I'll go ahead and move on, and then we can check back and see what we've discovered in the chat.
Perfect, Karen.
Okay. So we do want to acknowledge one of the things, obviously living at the Early Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing, it makes sense that we have a very integrative and holistic approach to coaching. And by that, we mean that everything is connected. It is a mind, body, spirit approach. And people may be suffering a physical challenge, but there's a huge mental or emotional component that needs to be addressed first in order for the physical challenge to shift. Maybe there's a crisis of faith that is impacting their ability to sleep at night. So it's all connected and can't be separated. And I will say, sadly, a little bit, that all health coaching out there in the world, at least the United States, does not necessarily take this approach. Probably about 10 to 15% of coaches really take this mind, body, spirit approach. So as you're seeking out a coach to work with, you want to make sure and ask a coach, what's their approach? What's their perspective? How have they been trained? There are programs besides Minnesota. We have colleagues at probably 8 to 10 other programs in the United States that really do focus on bringing in the integrative and the holistic, but that is not true of all national board certified coaches. So we think that's really important. The other part of that, particularly the integrative piece, is that coaches are not meant to be content experts in any of these areas. They're not content expert in any conventional healthcare unless they have other training, nor are they a content expert in any areas of integrative or complementary approaches. But they have a good working recognition and awareness of the range of what's out there, who's doing what, how one thing may help you with another. And so that awareness and that familiarity with the field and relationships with other practitioners are ways that they can help their clients take new approaches. So Teresa, do we have anything in our chat that you'd like to share?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. We have a lot of fun answers. So we got a little of everything. So it was fun to see, stress, overall health, pain, new life skills, chronic disease, feeling stuck, learning to share. That was an interesting answer. And I think it's so true. Some people are not super comfortable sharing with others. So having a sounding board would be a really important idea. And then transitions and anyway, it was a little of everything. So thanks everyone for your great answers. We really appreciate your vulnerability.
Fabulous. It's great to hear. So I'll let you take this.
Yeah, so just to elaborate a little bit on Karen's comment about what's out there as far as health coaches go. You know, here at the center, we have we're very mission driven, I guess, to really be integrative and holistic in our approach. And we want to just let you know that when you search for a health coach, there is a broad spectrum of what's available. The training minimum to be nationally board certified is 75 hours, which is not much. Our program on the other end of that spectrum is 750 roughly hours. So you can see quite a bit more, tenfold, as Karen always says, the training and experience. And so some of those shorter programs are very conventionally, really conventionally focused, more conventional medicine. They might have a specific curriculum. Some of them we're hearing about, it's like in week 1, you always talk about sleep. And in week 2, you always talk about water. And, so it can be a very prescriptive approach to some of the coaching or very condition specific. So that's more on the far end of smaller training, more specific. And then there's a lot in between. And we fall on the far other end of the spectrum where we are wanting our clients to have resources that are, whether integrative medicine or complementary and alternative speaks to them, or truly just conventional medicine or anything in between. And we look at every area of their life. That's really how we approach the coaching. So just so you know, it depends on who you are. Sometimes, like let's say you just want to lose 10 pounds before your a graduation or a wedding or something, one of those kind of quick goals. You might just need a standard health coach who's just going to give you basic support for diet and exercise. And other things are more complex and require more unraveling and more resources that are more integrative and holistic. So we just want to make sure you understand there's a lot more to health coaching than there ever was.
Thank you, Teresa. So I'll be brief with this because we want to make sure we have lots of time for Q&A. But just to acknowledge that, this field is a fairly young field. I would say the private, more, nonprofit organizations that started offering some training programs in wellness coaching really started that in about 2003. It comes out of a long history of positive psychology, of life coaching, of which Teresa was trained originally in the life coaching area, which preceded health and wellness coaching. Often people do ask us, what's the difference? Why shouldn't I just work with a life coach? And really, what we say to people, particularly from the kinds of coaches that we train, our students receive all of the training that life coaches receive, plus a whole bunch more. So anything that you would address with a life coach, you could address with one of our integrative health and well-being coaches. There are many things in health and health care that a life coach would not be familiar with, and so their orientation may be different. There are other kinds of coaching out there, including executive coaches. There's obviously different kinds of athletic coaches, so there are career coaches. So you really want to make sure that you're looking for a coach that's going to help you with what you want to do. But so as the field is maturing, we found that it was really important to establish some minimal competencies and some standard definitions across the field. We led efforts to begin those conversations a little over 10 years ago. And that led to, a partnership with the National Board of Medical Examiners, which is the entity that's been providing board certification to physicians for over 100 years. And so in partnership with them, we've developed both a process for approving educational training programs, and that process has been in place since 2016, and then a national board certification process where students who graduate from approved programs can provide documentation of their practice experience and sit for a national exam. And we're very proud to say that as of January of 2021, we have now board certified over 5,000 coaches in the United States. So that's very exciting. Lastly, I just want to acknowledge that we recognize that the paying for a coach If you're doing that out of pocket, and that's the way that many coaches are set up in private practice, that may be challenging. We're endeavoring to embed coaching more in existing programs and places, including conventional healthcare. And that requires making some movement into changing reimbursement processes. There are what we call level 3. They're basically pilot CPT codes, which are the billing codes that your physicians and nurses use when you see them for a service. We now do have these pilot codes that are approved for health coaching, both individual and group coaching. We're in kind of a trial period to demonstrate utilization and efficacy right now. And we're really hoping the way that that's moving ahead is that by 2023, that those CPT codes will be fully approved, which means that your doctor's office will be able to bill a third-party payer, an insurance company, or Medicare, Medicaid for those coaching services. So all of those things are going to have a huge impact on the future of health coaching, but we're seeing our expansion not just in healthcare, but in areas from education to senior living to fitness. You can name any location and we can find ways in which we're beginning to find that health coaching plays a role. So with that said, these resources are provided here for you. The PowerPoint will be sent out in Molly's follow-up email, as well as some other resources, including some research articles for those of you who like to look at some evidence. And with that, I am going to bring us back to a place where we can look at some Q&A.
Well, thank you so much, Karen and Teresa, for the great presentation. And I have to say, you did a wonderful job of answering already many of the questions that have been queued up. So you did a nice job anticipating questions. One person writes, and I'll direct this one to you, Karen. It seems like a health and well-being coach has to be a jack of all trades. How does the coach and the client know when it's time to refer to another professional? I'm thinking specifically around behavior change, mental health. That might be a gray area.
Sure. Well, apart from mental health, one, the coach is an expert in the change process and is not really a content expert in any of the particular areas of healthcare. So the anticipation would be for any particular medical issues that the client would also have a team of providers that they're involved with, whether they're physicians, psychiatrists, nutritionists, and the coach is trained to be able to make suggestions, though not standard referrals of, from what you're saying, I think the questions you're asking, it would be helpful, for example, for you to see a nutritionist, because those are the kinds of questions that you're asking. In the mental health arena, coaching is actually playing a much larger and growing role. We spend a significant amount of our time in training students to recognize what they can do with mental health issues alone, when they're out of their scope of practice, and when they need to have a licensed mental health provider, either also seeing the client or seeing the client instead of them, kind of depending upon what the criteria are. And actually a number of our graduates and alumni have worked for locations that provide pretty exclusively mental health services, and have found actually that coaching, even with populations we might have never considered, like chronic schizophrenics, that coaching in partnership with mental health services can really provide great support for people being able to make behavior change and acquire some self-management skills. So I think we're going to see a growing involvement of coaches in mental health, because there's such a huge need there, but it's an important piece so that they know that when they're out of their scope of practice.
Thanks for that, Karen. So Teresa, somebody else writes, do you anticipate that health coaches will become more prevalent within medical settings, and that we'll see a point where nurse practitioners and physicians refer their patients to health coaches?
That's our dream, right? Like, yeah, Karen, cross your fingers. Thanks, Mary Jo. It's a great question. And I think that really is the vision and the hope. And I think we're starting to see it already. There are a number of people who are being very pioneering out in the field. We're seeing physicians run group visits where they're seeing a particular diagnosis of a patient type, and they will have a health coach as a partner and bill under their extended visit code and do both the physician work and some coaching so that they can implement the behavior change challenges right within the visit. As well as, Karen, I'm thinking of the PACT program, which has been all about chronic pain, that really looking at how health coaching can help with chronic pain, and they're finding ways to get billing reimbursement for it. So I think that there are more and more interesting ways it's being implemented, and Karen and I are, of course, pushing ever forward to have it be a part of the model.
So there are a lot of questions, that people have put both in the chat and in questions about the cost of health coaching. And Karen, you mentioned CPT codes, and at some point there may be even better reimbursement than there is now. But there are questions that people are asking, like, what does it cost, to see a health coach if it's not reimbursed?
Sure. Obviously, that varies a little bit in different markets. And so, San Francisco and New York City are going to be different than Minneapolis. So if you're here from somewhere else, I can kind of at least allude to that. I would say for out-of-pocket private pay health coaching, and again, it's a little bit different with different providers, but may range from as little as $60 an hour to as much as $250 an hour, depending upon expertise, background, reasons that you're seeing them. Some coaches like to do things where a client will commit to 5 sessions because they find that that's the most successful in achieving change. And so there's a package price for, seeing a client. Like I do a package price with my acupuncturist. So there's those kinds of things. There also are coaches out there that do sliding scales with people's, dependent upon people's ability to pay. And then at the extreme end of that, besides being in places where you can receive coaching services through your healthcare center, like for example, we work a lot with a coach at North Point Healthcare Center, and coaching is just provided to people who are patients there. They don't pay anything extra for it. There is also free coaching available to people who have new or chronic health conditions through Pathways Minneapolis and Uptown, where they can get coaching that's provided by our alumni that provide free coaching there.
Great. Those are wonderful resources, Karen. So Teresa, somebody else writes, would a health coach be able to help an individual create healthy routines for themselves and their family? Meal times, sleep schedules, getting outdoors, balancing family and work responsibilities, or help even setting goals in these areas. I work part-time from home, have 5 young children, and have a hard time balancing it all.
Wow.
First of all, good for you. That's so incredible. What good work you're doing in the world, raising 5 children. Yes, that's one of the things I think health coaching is made for. We love to help people not just create routines, but find ones that are actually going to work for them. We would take into account all of the things you're trying to balance in your life and help you make realistic choices so that you could have early success and build on it.
So another question, Karen, you mentioned, that more and more we're seeing healthcare providers, physicians, nurse practitioners make referrals to health coaches. But if the clinic that somebody's going to knows nothing about health coaching, how does somebody go about finding a health coach?
Sure. Well, a couple of ways. One, we're happy to be a resource at the center, and we have a lovely team of alumni, many of whom have practices. And so we're happy to try to help people make connections. But the website, which Teresa alluded to on an earlier slide, which will be in the follow-up for the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching, actually has a coach finder on it. So if you want to find someone who's board certified in your geographic area, you can do that. Sometimes they also list certain specialty areas of interest and things like that. Given the current climate, particularly in our post-pandemic, obviously a lot of healthcare services, including health coaches, moved entirely to telehealth over the last 18 months or so. And a lot of coaching is going to be continuing that way. I think people are finding it's convenient. They don't have to travel anywhere. They don't have to park and deal with traffic and weather and all that stuff. And so sometimes the geographic location of the coach doesn't really make a difference. It's really just finding somebody that you like. So please don't hesitate to use us as a resource, but also to check out that Coach Finder site on the national website.
Well, I want to thank both of you, Karen and Teresa, for this really informative webinar today. I also want to acknowledge and thank all of the staff at the Bakken Center who helped make today's webinar possible. We hope that you'll join us for our next webinar, August 17th, that will focus on our mindfulness programs. If you'd like to learn more about the center's health coaching programs, we'll include that information in the post-webinar email. So thanks all for being with us today.
Thanks very much.